On the morning of September 10th, 2015, Lakewood awoke slowly, shrouded in a light mist. Amberfield Lake, a place where many locals began their day, beckoned with its mirror-like calm. At 7 a.m., a group of teenagers set out to spend the last days of summer vacation there. They planned to capture the sunrise and chat about the upcoming school year. As they approached the shore, one of the girls noticed something unusual in the water. At first, it appeared to be boat debris, but upon closer inspection, it became clear they were looking at bodies. The teenagers froze in horror, and when the gravity of the situation hit, they rushed to call the police. Local law enforcement arrived promptly, joined shortly by curious residents drawn to the commotion near the lake. Tension filled the air. The lake, once a symbol of relaxation and community, had become a crime scene. The bodies were identified through their personal documents. Pastor Thomas Gray, renowned organist Susan Crane, and young volunteer Liam Carter. These three were familiar faces in Lakewood, especially at the local church where they worked and helped. Their presence at the lake that morning was puzzling, but the most horrifying part was the condition of their bodies, which bore clear signs of violence. Fear gripped Lakewood. In a small town where everyone knew each other, such a tragedy was unthinkable. Within an hour, local news stations broadcasted the first images from the scene, and every resident witnessed the beginning of something terrifying. The police immediately launched an investigation. The lake was cordoned off with tape as investigators began their search for clues. Everyone asked the same question: who could commit such a brutal crime, and why? The local church, once the heart of the community, stood silent. Its doors remained closed that day, but a crowd gathered outside. Among them were parishioners and curious onlookers, all staring at the doors as if waiting for Pastor Gray to emerge and explain what had happened. But that didn't happen. That morning, Lakewood lost its sense of normalcy and calm. Everyone knew this day would change the town forever. The police worked tirelessly at the crime scene, using every moment to gather evidence. Amberfield Lake, now cordoned off with bright yellow tape, was restricted to investigators only. Their first task was to thoroughly examine the shoreline for any clues that could shed light on what had happened. Results came quickly. Near the spot where the bodies were discovered lay a broken fishing line. Nearly invisible in the grass, it caught the sharp eye of Detective Ben Carter, who immediately recognized its potential importance. They also found shoe prints, clear tracks indicating another person had been present at the scene. Additionally, investigators discovered a shattered flashlight a few meters from the water, hidden near some bushes. It seemed someone had left in haste, abandoning crucial evidence. Fingerprints on the flashlight's handle were promptly sent for analysis. Eyewitness accounts also began to surface. Several people confirmed seeing Pastor Gray, Susan Crane, and Liam Carter by the lake that morning. However, none of the witnesses noticed anything suspicious. Everything seemed peaceful until it was too late. Meanwhile, the investigation shifted focus to the church where the victims had worked. This place held the potential key to understanding the motive behind the crime. Inside the church, an eerie silence reigned, and the faces of the parishioners reflected a mix of grief and fear. Everyone seemed to be replaying their last conversations with the pastor and his colleagues. Many recalled tensions between Pastor Gray and John Fenley, one of the parishioners. John was known for his fiery temperament and frequent clashes with the pastor. Their most recent argument had taken place just days before the tragedy, witnessed by dozens of people. They reported that John had been visibly enraged, even muttering threats toward Gray. Another startling discovery came to light. The night before the crime, Gray, Susan, and Liam had held a lengthy meeting in the church office. They were seen to have fired, but no one knew what the discussion was about. Some speculated it involved an upcoming charity event. But why did the conversation need such secrecy? Theories began to form. Some believed the motive was revenge. Others thought it might involve financial disputes or jealousy. The closer the investigation seemed to get to the truth, the more questions arose. Lakewood was engulfed in fear and a growing sense of unease. The new details emerging from the investigation only heightened the anxiety among Lakewood's residents. A town once known for its tranquility now lived in fear. The police worked tirelessly, day and night, but the answers remained elusive. A few days after the tragedy, investigators found a crucial witness. Melissa Fenley, John's younger sister, confessed that on the morning of the incident, She saw a figure in a dark coat near the lake. This person stood at a distance, silently observing the trio. She couldn't make out their face, but she was certain the figure seemed suspicious. Melissa couldn't identify who it was, but her account added more questions to the growing mystery. Later, the investigators discovered a blood-stained glove on the lake's shore. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to one of the victims. This revelation was significant, but still didn't answer the key question: who committed this heinous crime? Meanwhile, rumors began to spread throughout the town. Some believed that John Fenley, given his well-known conflicts with Pastor Gray, was the culprit. Others suspected his brother, Garrett Black, who had recently returned to Lakewood after years of absence. Garrett had a troubled reputation and had always kept his distance from the community. His return shortly before the tragedy raised many eyebrows. Both brothers tried to avoid the growing public scrutiny, but their names were increasingly linked to the crime. John seemed bewildered when asked about the morning's events at the lake, but he vehemently denied any involvement. Garrett, on the other hand, remained silent, further fueling suspicion. Parishioners recalled frequent clashes between John and the pastor, with jealousy as the root cause. John had long been infatuated with Susan Crane, but she remained indifferent to his advances. Her closeness to the pastor had stoked John's anger and resentment, a jealousy that could have led to a fatal motive. As tension mounted, a sense of paranoia gripped the town. People started locking their doors even during the day, and children were no longer allowed to roam freely. Theories and possible motives were discussed at every corner. Everyone had their own version of events, but none offered a clear explanation. The police felt the pressure from both the community and the media. Everyone demanded swift results, but the investigation was becoming more tangled. One thing was clear: the crime in Lakewood had not only claimed 3 lives, but also shattered the trust among its people. On September 14, 2015, the investigation reached a critical turning point that changed the course of the case. A long-abandoned cabin on the outskirts of Lakewood had gone unnoticed for years. However, a local resident reported seeing light in its windows a few nights before the tragedy, even though the cabin was typically vacant. The police decided to investigate, and the visit proved pivotal. Inside the cabin, investigators found a metal box hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The box was locked, but they opened it on sight. Inside were items that shocked even the most seasoned detectives: personal letters, old photographs, and a significant amount of cash. Most intriguing of all, the letters contained explicit details of a romantic relationship between Pastor Gray and Susan Crane. These revelations confirmed that their connection was more than just professional, a fact they had kept hidden from the community. This discovery caused an uproar. Those who knew Gray as a figure of moral authority were stunned. The letters quickly suggested a potential motive. Someone may have learned of the affair and sought revenge out of jealousy or betrayal. That same day, the police arrested John Fenley. A spool of fishing line identical to the one used to bind the victims was found in his garage, becoming a key piece of evidence. Initially, John denied any involvement, but his behavior was anxious and erratic. Meanwhile, investigators received information about the whereabouts of Garrett Black, John's brother, who had disappeared after the tragedy. Garrett was apprehended in a neighboring town while attempting to withdraw money from his account. He appeared calm but maintained a silence that spoke volumes. The 2 suspects were interrogated separately, and their accounts of the events began to diverge. John claimed he had no motive for murder and that his presence near the lake that morning was coincidental. Garrett, on the other hand, hinted that John had acted out of jealousy, insisting that he himself was merely an unwitting accomplice. Another damning piece of evidence surfaced. Personal belongings of Pastor Gray were found in the trunk of Garrett's car. This further linked the brothers to the crime and suggested that the murders had been premeditated. The investigators were on the brink of uncovering the full truth. Everything pointed to John and Garrett acting together, yet their true motives and the precise sequence of events remained a puzzle. This turning point left the community grappling with a sobering reality. Even familiar faces could harbor dark secrets. The investigators worked tirelessly to uncover how personal conflicts and hidden emotions could have led to the horrifying events by the lake. Every piece of evidence pointed to deeply personal motives behind John Fenley's and Garrett Black's actions. Untangling the web of grievances and tensions between Pastor Gray, Susan Crane, and John became key to understanding the crime. John was known in the community as a strong-willed but impulsive individual. His jealousy of Pastor Gray stemmed not only from Susan's affection, but also from a sense of injustice. John believed Gray received more trust and respect than he deserved. This was compounded by John's growing isolation from a community that increasingly supported the pastor. Garrett, who had been away from Lakewood for years, returned to town burdened by deep dissatisfaction with his life. He was a man who felt misunderstood and rejected. His involvement in his brother's scheme was motivated not only by familial loyalty, but also by a desire to settle scores with those he blamed for his failures. That fateful night, John and Garrett acted under the weight of emotional tension. Their initial intentions may not have been lethal, but the situation quickly spiraled out of control. During a confrontation, John demanded that the pastor confess to his relationship with Susan, but Gray's silence only fueled his inner turmoil. For Susan Crane, the situation was a final test. She had always avoided conflicts, striving to remain neutral, but her closeness to Gray had become a trigger for John. Her quiet dignity in the face of his accusations only deepened his sense of helplessness. Liam Carter, the youngest of the victims, was a volunteer who wholeheartedly believed in the power of community. His tragic death was the result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. His loss struck a particularly deep chord with everyone who knew him, as he represented the hope and future of Lakewood. The investigation also revealed how deeply buried psychological wounds could turn into a destructive force. Every person involved in the tragedy had struggled with their own fears and disappointments, isolated in their personal battles. This highlighted the importance of support and open communication in a community where people often hid their true feelings. The once proud town of Lakewood, known for its unity, now bore a scar that served as a stark reminder of the danger of unresolved resentment and unspoken conflicts. The police were gradually piecing together the full picture, but crucial details still eluded them. After the murders, John Fenley and Garrett Black made every effort to cover their tracks. They knew Lakewood would not overlook such a horrific crime, and each day brought them closer to exposure. It became clear that after the events at the cabin, the brothers headed to the lake to dispose of the bodies. They used a boat found in an old shed near the shore. John and Garrett believed the water would conceal everything, but they underestimated the investigators' attention to detail. They attempted to destroy the evidence by setting the boat on fire afterward. However, their plan had weaknesses. After burning the boat, the brothers hurriedly left the scene, failing to notice they had left some incriminating items behind. The fishing line found on the shore matched the one used to bind the victims. Additionally, one of Garrett's gloves accidentally slipped from his pocket and was found near the water. These small but significant oversights would later become critical in the investigation. The police also reviewed surveillance footage from cameras along the only road leading to the lake. One recording captured a car resembling Garrett's. This allowed investigators to pinpoint the brothers' arrival time at the lake, contradicting their claims that they had been home that night. Another important clue was the broken flashlight found at the scene. Its cracked handle and fragments of fabric from Garrett's clothing indicated a physical struggle. Forensic analysis confirmed the flashlight had been used as a tool of intimidation, further tying Garrett to the crime. Despite their efforts to erase all traces, John and Garrett's panic and impulsive actions worked against them. Investigators found traces of a flammable mixture in the trunk of Garrett's car, linking him to the burned boat and solidifying his involvement. Although the brothers had hoped that the stillness of the night and the lake's depths would conceal their crime, their mistakes gradually led to the truth. The community of Lakewood, closely following the investigation, felt both relieved and horrified. People understood that, no matter how meticulously the perpetrators tried to hide their guilt, justice would inevitably uncover their misdeeds. After weeks of intense investigation, the evidence collected by the police became indisputable. John Fenley and Garrett Black could no longer escape accountability. The case was brought to court, and the people of Lakewood eagerly awaited the trial, hoping for justice to be served. The trial began on October 12th, and the courtroom was packed. Residents came not only in search of the truth, but also to understand what could have driven two familiar men to commit such a brutal crime. John and Garrett sat side by side, both appearing subdued and withdrawn. Their lawyers tried to present the case as an accidental incident, but the prosecution focused on presenting compelling evidence. Among the key pieces of evidence were the fishing line, the blood-stained glove, surveillance footage, and traces of the flammable mixture in Garrett's trunk. Melissa Fenley's testimony describing the mysterious figure she saw by the lake also played a significant role. Furthermore, the letters found in the metal box revealed the hidden relationship between Pastor Gray and Susan Crane, providing a clear motive for the crime. The most shocking moments came during the defendant's confessions. John, who initially denied his involvement, eventually admitted that jealousy and anger had driven his actions. "I couldn't stand their lies any longer," he declared during his interrogation, referring to Gray and Susan's relationship. Garrett, meanwhile, described his role as brotherly support, though his regret was evident in his expression. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, the judge delivered the verdict. John Fenley received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, while Garrett Black was sentenced to 25 years for his role in the murders and the attempt to cover up the crime. The community greeted the verdict with a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing it would not bring back the victims. For Lakewood, the trial marked a moment of reckoning that exposed hidden tensions and human frailties. The church, once the town's spiritual center, now stood empty, its doors locked. Parishioners struggled to find new ways to restore their faith and sense of community. The verdict not only transformed the lives of the convicted, but also left a lasting impact on the entire town. People began to trust their instincts, openly discuss their problems, and work toward building a more united community. Though the tragedy left an indelible scar, it also served as a stark reminder of the catastrophic consequences of unaddressed emotions and unresolved conflicts. The trial concluded, but the pain and disillusionment lingered. The townspeople knew this story would remain a permanent part of their collective memory. After the emotionally charged trial that shook Lakewood, life in the town slowly began to return to its usual rhythm. Yet, the shadow of the tragedy at Amberfield Lake left a deep scar in the hearts of every resident. The lake, once a symbol of peace and tranquility, now evoked only pain and fear. The families of the victims struggled to move forward, but their lives were forever changed. Liam Carter's family, devastated by the loss of the young volunteer, continued organizing charity events in his memory, hoping his dream of a strong and united community could still be realized. Their home became a kind of memorial, preserving Liam's belongings, diaries, and awards for his contributions to church programs. Susan Crane's family avoided the public eye, but their grief was palpable throughout the town. Her talent and dedication to music had left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who had heard her play the organ. Anyone who entered the church remembered her gentle smile and calm voice, which would never again fill the sacred space. The church, once the heart of Lakewood's life, never regained its former glory. Its doors remained closed, and the bulletin board at the entrance still displayed the schedule for the last planned service. The community was unable to find a new pastor, and those who had once actively supported church activities now stayed away, their trust broken. Legends about the lake began to emerge. Some claimed that on quiet nights, whispers or even voices could be heard, echoing the dreadful events. Local fishermen avoided the area where the bodies had been found, and tourists no longer visited Lakewood for its natural beauty. Amberfield Lake had become a symbol of pain that would never fully fade. Yet, amidst the sorrow, signs of recovery began to appear. The community started having more open conversations about the importance of trust, support, and mental health. The local authorities opened a support center for residents, offering counseling and a space to share their experiences. There was also a proposal to build a memorial in honor of the victims, ensuring their stories would never be forgotten. For Lakewood, this tragedy became a lesson that changed everyone. It served as a reminder of the importance of listening, understanding, and being vigilant toward those who suffer in silence. The residents knew that, although time might dull the pain, the scar would remain as a permanent reminder of the fragility of life and the vital need to preserve peace within their community.